On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 vanished from civilian air traffic control radar over the South China Sea. The transponder was manually disabled. The military primary radar lost the aircraft over the Andaman Sea 40 minutes later. For days, an armada of international ships searched the shallow waters of the South China Sea for wreckage. They were searching the wrong ocean. While the world looked east, a satellite in geostationary orbit 22,000 miles above the Indian Ocean had already received a final silent electronic handshake from the airplane. The plane had not crashed when it vanished. It had flown in complete radio silence for another 6 hours, deep into the most remote ocean on Earth. This is File 13, the burst timing offset. A modern Boeing 777 is a flying data center. It is connected to the ground in dozens of ways. Voice radios, civilian transponder, military secondary radar. ACARS, the Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, which sends automated maintenance and position reports to the airline via satellite every 30 minutes. Whoever was flying MH370 systematically silenced every channel. The transponder was manually turned off, the voice radios went dead. ACARS reporting was disabled at 0107 UTC, less than an hour after takeoff. By every standard checklist, the airplane had gone dark. But ACARS reporting and the satellite terminal that carried it are not the same system. The satellite data unit on a 777, a small gray rack-mounted box deep in the avionics bay in Sabansoin, has its own job. It maintains a low-level link with whichever INMARSAT satellite is overhead, regardless of what application data it is or isn't carrying. Once an hour, the satellite sends the airplane a tiny silent query. The query carries no useful payload, it just asks, "Are you still there?" And the airplane's terminal, with no human supervision, automatically replies, "Yes." The pilot did not know that link existed. He could not have disabled it without depowering the avionics bay entirely. And depowering the avionics bay would have brought the engines down. For 6 hours after MH370 vanished from every other system, the satellite terminal on board kept answering the satellite's keep alive queries. 7 handshakes. Each one time-stamped to the millisecond. Each one logged in a network operations center in central London. And the engineers in that London office realized they had something nobody else had. The burst timing offset, or BTO, is the time it takes for a radio wave to travel from the satellite to the airplane and back. It sounds simple, it isn't. The satellite is in a known position 22,000 miles above the equator. The radio wave travels at the speed of light, which is a known constant. If you can measure the round-trip time of the keep alive handshake to 4 decimal places of a second, you can calculate the exact distance between the satellite and the airplane at the moment of that handshake. That calculated distance describes a sphere centered on the satellite. The sphere intersects the surface of Earth in a perfect ring. At 0811 UTC, the airplane was somewhere on that ring. The INMARSAT engineers ran the math against all 7 handshakes. They drew 7 rings across a 3D wireframe Earth. The rings constrained the airplane's possible flight path to a tightly bounded corridor of ocean and land. A corridor that stretched from Central Asia across the Indian Ocean all the way down toward Antarctica. But the corridor was not one path, it was 2. The 7 rings could be reconciled with a northern arc, bending up from the Andaman Sea, crossing the Himalayas, ending somewhere over Kazakhstan or western China. Or they could be reconciled with a southern arc, bending down from the Andaman Sea, crossing nothing but ocean, ending somewhere in the most remote stretch of water on the planet. 2 arcs, 1 plane. And the entire international search effort needed to know immediately which way it had turned. The BTO rings narrowed the airplane's possible position to a long arc. But the arc had two segments. The northern segment passed over inhabited land, Kazakhstan, western China, the southern edge of the Himalayas. The southern segment passed over nothing but the most remote stretch of ocean on Earth. The INMARSAT engineers had to invent an entirely new type of analysis on the fly. They turned to the burst frequency offset, or BFO. A radio wave has a nominal frequency. When the transmitter is stationary relative to the receiver sees that exact frequency. When the transmitter is moving toward the receiver, the radio wave is compressed and the received frequency is slightly higher than nominal. When the transmitter is moving away, the wave is stretched and the received frequency is slightly lower. This is the Doppler effect. The same physics that makes a police siren rise in pitch as it approaches and fall as it recedes. The INMARSAT engineers built a mathematical model relating the airplane's velocity, the satellite's orbital motion, and the observed frequency offset on each of the 7 handshakes. They ran the model against the northern arc. The simulated frequency curve diverged from the observed curve by over 11 Hz across the 6-hour flight. The northern path was mathematically inconsistent. They ran the model against the southern arc. The simulated frequency curve overlaid the observed curve within 1/3 of a hertz across all 7 handshakes. The southern path matched perfectly. The plane had not flown north, it had flown south. In complete radio silence, over open ocean, for 6 hours. It had flown until the engines starved of fuel. And the aircraft fell out of the sky into water more than 2 miles deep. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau took operational control of the search and shifted the entire effort south, anchored to the INMARSAT 7th handshake arc. The search zone was a 1.2 million square kilometer rectangle of open ocean. The average depth was 3,000 meters. There was nothing on the ocean floor that was supposed to be there. There were no shipping lanes. There were no fishing fleets. There was nothing but black water for thousands of miles. For 16 months, the search continued. Australian, Chinese, Malaysian, French, and British vessels deployed towed pinger locators and side-scan sonar arrays. They surveyed 900,000 square kilometers of seabed. And then, on July 29, 2015, on a black volcanic beach on the French island of Réunion, 2,000 miles west of the search zone, a man walking along the surf line picked up a weathered piece of aircraft wing flap. The part number stamped along its inner edge cross-referenced against Boeing's manufacturing records. The FLAPERON belonged to airframe 9M, MRO, Malaysia Airlines, Flight 370. The Australian Oceanographic Research Team ran a 16-month forward simulation of debris drift, starting from points along the INMARSAT 7th handshake arc. The simulation released tens of thousands of virtual debris particles. The largest concentration of particles, after 16 months of drift, arrived at Réunion Island within days of when the FLAPERON was actually found. Over the next 4 years, more debris was recovered. Pieces of horizontal stabilizer in Mozambique, engine cowling fragment in Mauritius, cabin interior panel in Madagascar. Each one matched the drift model, each one traced back to the same arc. The INMARSAT engineers in central London had been right. The plane had flown south. The plane had run out of fuel. The plane had fallen into the most remote ocean on Earth. And no breaker the pilot pulled, no transponder he shut off, no voice radio he disabled, could hide the airplane from the laws of physics that govern a radio wave between an antenna and a satellite 22,000 miles up. The mystery of why MH370 was taken may never be solved. The flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder remain on the ocean floor. Whoever was at the controls of the airplane left no recovered note. But the physics of where the airplane went is permanent. Operation Search MH370 demonstrated a new theorem of the era of digital surveillance. Every modern radio system, every cellular device, every satellite phone, every connected vehicle, every daitani connectionskidi kamadapro is in continuous handshake with infrastructure that is logging timing offsets to microsecond precision. Every device that transmits a radio wave is broadcasting its distance to whatever receiver is listening. Whether the user is aware of it or not, you can pull the breakers. You can turn off the transponder. You can plunge the cabin into darkness and vanish from every screen with a human watching it. But you cannot hide from the speed of light. You cannot hide the fundamental physics of a radio wave between an antenna and a receiver. As long as one device on board is still answering one keep-alive query, the math of where you are is being logged somewhere by a machine that does not need a human to interpret it. The session is logged, the connection is closed. The files remain open. The devices in your life right now, the phone in your pocket, the satellite tracker on your watch, the connected vehicle on your driveway, are all in continuous microsecond precision handshake with infrastructure overhead. Every one of those handshakes is being time-stamped. Every one of those timestamps is reconstructible into a position fix. Which leaves us with the closing question of File 13. Which signal in your life right now do you trust the least? To not be the next ghost ping. Quietly logging your position to a satellite that knows exactly where you are. 6 hours after you thought you had disappeared.